Oh, I'm flossing. Tell little bitch get up. Hit it once, had a feeling nauseous.
Welcome back, guys. JJ Buckets, you know where you are. Now, the Golden State Warriors are at a huge crossroads for this offseason. And I wanted to save this video for after the draft because I wanted to see what the Golden State Warriors would do. And now that I have, I can finally kind of bring full thoughts on the situation. Now, I say they're at a crossroads because they're going to enter this free agency with lots of question marks. Two of their big free agents are set to hit the free agent market while almost assuredly being out for next season. Kevin Durant has the Achilles injury that's going to keep him out for likely all of next year. Klay Thompson has that torn ACL that's going to keep him out for likely all of next year. And it makes the Warriors think, do they bring back one of these guys, both of these guys, knowing that you're going to basically give up on next season for the most part, and it's going to be potentially a wasted year of Steph Curry's prime. And past that, there's even the possibility that, Kevin Durant is going to opt into his player option anyways because he wants to take the guaranteed money after that injury. So you may not have a choice there in terms of him coming back and him being on the roster without you really even having say over the money and everything like that. But nonetheless, I think that the first big question that they ask themselves is what they do with their injured free agents. Now, if you ask me, I think they are going to bring Klay Thompson back. All indication kind of seems that he's going to come back. His dad has already talked about the fact that Klay Thompson wants to stay with the Warriors and he wants to remain a Golden State Warrior. So I think that situation's kind of in the bag. I think KD's is a situation that will play out depending on what KD wants to do. I think there are still desperate enough teams out there that will give Kevin Durant the money that he might want, even knowing that they're going to not have KD for a full year. But KD, like I said, could still opt in to his contract, so he could be on the books for the Warriors in any case. Now, people are ready to more or less dismiss the Warriors in the Western Conference as serious contenders for next year, or at least that's the kind of vibe I've gotten off this offseason so far. And I want to look at whether or not that's going to be the case for sure, because I understand that they're going to be missing Kevin Durant, they're going to be missing Klay Thompson, whether or not they bring them back and they're just injured for the year or they're just gone entirely. But should we really dismiss the team as a whole because of that? Let's take a look. Now, the roster obviously still has some question marks. Another big question in regards to free agency and the personnel they're going to have is DeMarcus Cousins going to come back? Now, if I'm Cousins and if I'm the Warriors, I think reuniting for at least one more year does seem to make sense. Now, with Cousins, the first question is his health. It's for sure his health. Sure, he played, but was he ever really fully healthy at any point? Probably not. On top of which, you didn't really get a good idea of where DeMarcus Cousins was at this past season because of A, like I said, the health, and B, he was a 4th, 5th option in the Golden State Warriors offense. The reason why reuniting for one more year for Cousins and the Warriors makes sense is it gives Cousins a chance to get fully healthy, and it gives himself a chance to really go out there and show that he's still worth the money that he thinks he's worth, despite the injuries and health concerns. And for the Warriors, it makes sense to bring him back because you'll get a chance, assuming he's healthy, assuming he's good to go, you'll get a chance to feature Cousins in your offense more, and he could still provide to be a very valuable piece, now that you don't have Klay, now that you don't have KD. Cousins has been a proven scorer, has been a proven contributor in the past, and giving him an offseason to get healthy and giving him a more prominent role in your offense there afterwards could actually yield some positive results. And, a big three core of Curry, let's assume a pretty good DeMarcus Cousins and Draymond Green, doesn't ultimately sound all too bad. It doesn't sound like a world beater, but it's definitely a lot better than what a lot of NBA franchises have, I would say. Now, let's say that's the case. Let's say DeMarcus Cousins is back. So your projected lineup at the moment, without getting into more, which I absolutely will get into, is Steph Curry, Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green, and DeMarcus Cousins. And it leaves the bench, maybe a little thin, depending on what your opinion is of the guys, but they'll probably be featuring, some of the guys we saw in the finals, like Quinn Cook, Alfonso McKinney, Jonas Jerebko, and Kevon Looney. Does that sound like the best bench in the world? Not really, no. But, these guys could develop, they could come along, and they could be better just in more prominent roles, but nonetheless, it leaves questions about how good Golden State's bench is, how good that depth is. So with that being said, let's look at some of the things they did to address that, because they've already done things to address that. Let's look at the draft haul. Now, Jordan Poole seems like somebody that's going to be a perfect fit for Golden State. His offensive skill set in terms of the shooting and everything seems like it would be a hand-in-glove fit for the Golden State Warriors and their offense and what they want to do. Could he eventually be, a potential temporary fix at that shooting guard position while Klay Thompson is out? Could he, supplant Sean Livingston for the starting shooting guard spot? You'd have to think it's an option. Or optimistically, if you're the Warriors, you'd like to think it's on the board. And that could be an enticing option. Another interesting thing from this year's draft was the Warriors' handling of, and I know I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to try and say it anyways, their handling of Alen Smilogic. I think that could have been worse. But yeah, he's a second-round pick of the Warriors this year. He was on the Santa Cruz, I believe it's Warriors, on their G League affiliate for quite some time. And they would even go about hiding him from scouts when they came around, kind of keeping him this sort of mystery man. And then they eventually did everything in their power in the NBA draft to go get him and make sure he ended up a part of the Golden State Warriors franchise. Now, the handling of this whole situation has drawn some comparisons to, the way the Denver Nuggets kind of hid Nikola Jokic from the entire NBA. And basically looking at some of the tape of this guy and looking at some of the draft reports, he kind of seems like a very typical, maybe not typical, but he seems like a high upside potential diamond in the rough. If they groom him right, if he comes along right, if this works out, the Warriors are going to look like geniuses from, hiding him from the NBA and then grooming him in their system and turning him into a great NBA player. And I think there's a good possibility of that. But nonetheless, the point that I should be getting to here is that he's not an answer for next season. And we're talking about next season. We're interested in how the Warriors are going to perform in this quote-unquote lost season from, not having Klay and KD. Now, I don't think he's going to be a fix for the upcoming year. I think he could be a potential, great piece in the future, but for the upcoming year, who knows? It doesn't seem like it. And I could very well be wrong, but it doesn't seem like it. So with that being said, their draft haul yields some positives, yields some negatives for next season. Now, what are the free agent options for the Warriors here? Now, again, the thing that just popped out at me the most when looking at the Golden State roster for next season is Sean Livingston starting at the shooting guard position is just not something you want to see if you're the Warriors. With all due respect to Sean Livingston, he's still a very good player, but he shouldn't be your starting shooting guard for sure. He should be one of those bench pieces where he has a chance to come out and play against second units and maybe contribute a little more there. But as a starting shooting guard, you gotta think they want better options than that, especially considering that the Warriors are going to be starting a lineup of, hypothetically right now, Steph Curry, Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green, DeMarcus Cousins. That is a stark contrast from some of the previous years that the Warriors have had just incredible shooting on the court. Now you have a guy like Iguodala who's not really a shooter. Now you have a guy like Livingston who's not really a shooter. Draymond Green is really spotty with his shot. It's a lineup where DeMarcus Cousins is really your second best shooter. And you got to think, for a system like the Warriors, for an offense like what the Warriors want to run, that's not okay. That is not a legitimate scenario you want to be entering, next season in, if you want to be successful at least. So I looked at the free agent options, and guys that immediately stood out to me, at that 2-guard position that could make a difference on this team are guys like Wesley Matthews, guys like Reggie Bullock, guys like maybe even Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and guys like Wayne Ellington. Those are all pieces that I think could thrive beside Steph Curry if they come at the right price. And that's the thing for the Warriors, is whether or not they're coming at the right price, because if they're on the books paying, say, Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, when Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson aren't even playing, they're going to be a little thin on money. So the one that feels the most realistic to me, and the one that I feel like is the best fit for the Warriors here, is targeting Wayne Ellington. I don't think he's going to come overly expensive. Yeah, in theory, they should be able to afford him, given the right circumstances. And a lot of what he does, coming off the screens as a shooter and everything like that, just fits well with what the Warriors want to do. And it fits well in giving them some semblance of having a Klay Thompson-like player on the court, without obviously having the full impact that Klay Thompson gives you, but at least gives you a very cheap alternative to running a similar scheme. And I think like a lineup of Steph Curry, Wayne Ellington, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green, DeMarcus Cousins sounds a lot better than running Sean Livingston at that 2 spot. And immediately you get the impact of moving Livingston back to the bench and having his impact come off the bench, where I think he can still be a valuable contributor for the Warriors. So to me, that's the decision that makes the most sense here in terms of giving the Warriors a realistic chance to at least somewhat compete next season. Let's not forget about the big thing here, is that Steph Curry is still Steph Curry. The fact that he's going to have less talent around him could just give him a chance to really have another MVP season and average something, let's say, ridiculous, like 29 and like 7, Steph Curry is a great player, and people forget a lot about how lethal he can truly be, I feel, because he's surrounded by so many other lethal options, like a Kevin Durant, like a Klay Thompson, that his scoring sometimes, as great as it is, people forget that it could even be better when it's featured more prominently. But the other question is, if it's, if Steph Curry's being featured, but he's not surrounded by this great talent, is he still as successful? Because that's another thing you definitely have to keep in mind. Nonetheless, if I had to bank on whether or not Steph Curry is going to have a monster year next year for the Warriors, I feel like I would bank on yes a lot more easily than I would no. That being said, the last part of this equation has to do with the Western Conference teams around them. And what are they doing? Now, I think the Blazers and the Nuggets are kind of the mainstays that they don't really have to do much, or they have to do little and they'll still be kind of near the top of the pack here. I think the Nuggets are that young team that's knocking at the door, ready to be a contender, like a true contender. Obviously, we saw what the Blazers did last year. And on top of that, the Jazz obviously are going all in for next season with the addition of Mike Conley to surround their kind of impressive defensive unit and, take some responsibility off Donovan Mitchell as a primary ball handler. They're making the right moves. And then, of course, we know what the Lakers did. They just paired 2 top 7 players, maybe even top 5, depending on how you rank them, in Anthony Davis and LeBron. And now they just have to surround them with the right role players, which you'd like to assume that management is good enough to do, but I don't know what the faith is in Lakers management right now. But nonetheless, obviously the teams around the Warriors are tough right now. And if I had to make an overall projection on where the Warriors would land at the end of next season, I would say they'd be a middle of the pack playoff team. They'd probably be a 4 or 5 seed, maybe even as low as a 6 seed. But I don't see them dropping further than that. I get the impact of missing some of their key guys, like they're definitely going to miss next season, is going to be shown, and they're going to drop off a little bit. But I think people just completely dismissing them are also wrong in their own way, I think the Warriors are going to be a middle of the pack playoff team that people are going to be scared of playing because the Warriors could still do a lot of damage. But overall, yes, I think people are right to kind of have other favorites coming out of the West. It's been JJ Buckets. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And other than that, guys, I am out.